You're listening to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Danny and Jason had many discussions and debates on the back porch while making pivotal investment moves with assets. That's right, with trading cards. They welcome you to the back porch and right into those discussions about current sports news with a fresh and unique twist. So come on and join us. Welcome to the Back Porch Talk podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason.
Your co-host, Danny.
We have a special edition show for you all. In the NFL, we are now finally at playoff time. The playoff bracket has been completed. We know who's going to be playing who. But first, Danny, last NFL weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles sit their starters, meaning Saquon Barkley does not have the opportunity to break the season rushing record that is held by Eric Dickerson. And I feel some kind of way about this, Danny. This is history. I think Saquon could have pressed a bit more to get this record. I understand what he's saying about he's going to do it for the team and looking for the Super Bowl. And I think two things can be true. I think you can go for the record and go for the Super Bowl. I think you probably will only need close to half to get 100 yards, 101 yards, especially with the way the Giants have been playing the whole year. I think you could got that off of, a half. And I wish they would have went for the record, man, because, I think you could have made up some of that money too on the back end. The amount of times that you can say I'm the all-time rushing season record holder, I think you could have made up some money there, Saquon. But nonetheless, man, the Eagles go and win 20-13. This didn't make no difference, Danny. It didn't matter. But what say you about this rushing record that is not a rushing record?
Saquon's been doing this all year, where he's more or less been selfless and more about the Eagles versus Saquon. I was hoping too he would do it against the Giants, just to show them, this is what you lost. And I get it too from the standpoint of if the offensive line starters weren't in, there was more of a risk of possible injury, or the holes wouldn't be like they were in previous games. So obviously that would play a factor, but if you're that close, why not?
Why not go for it, man?
I understand the Super Bowl and everything else, but at the same time, man, you're knocking on the door. You had a fantastic season.
Come on, man.
And you've been, like I said, being selfless for the team. The team could have looked out and said, all right, run him the first quarter. Kind of track it, right? How's he running? How's everything kind of progressing? Is this not going to work? Then bench him, if that's the case. But at least give him a half to try for it. But they chose not to, and I think it's going to be tough to get Dickerson's record, and he had a fantastic shot at getting it.
He was right there.
Yeah, so it would have been awesome just to see history made, and we didn't get that opportunity. So it's kind of sad in a way from a sports fan perspective, and you're always striving for greatness and all these things, and just to see them sit him, it's just tough just to see. So Eric Dickerson gets another year with his record. He doesn't have to worry about talking about it anytime soon, I don't think.
One thing we got to keep in mind too, fans, and again, fans, listen, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You know how the algorithms do. This rushing record was broken back in 1984. So we're talking about a 40-year NFL record. And so, again, 16 games back then, 17 games this go around, but it would have been less rushing attempts. One other game of note here, the most pressing game of the NFL weekend was that the last game of the season being played by the Minnesota Vikings against the Detroit Lions. This one was to see who was going to be the number one seed in the NFC conference. And oh boy, who would ever have thought that the Detroit Lions would blast the Minnesota Vikings, man. 31-9, man. This was not even a game. It was just so many moments here where Minnesota could have scored a touchdown when they got in the red zone, but they just didn't. The Lions defense just prevailed, man. They were not letting the Minnesota Vikings go into the end zone at all. Sam Darnold only throws for 166 yards. I think that's a season low. No touchdowns, no interceptions. This had a pedestrian game, man, but you got to give props to the Detroit Lions defense and their Glenn, man. They dialed up a number of rushes. Sam Darnold was hit several times, man. The defense was just, man, was wicked. I think this is something to look out for, man. You got to give kudos to Gibbs, who had 4 touchdowns in total, 3 rushing, 1 receiving, and the Detroit Lions, they get a break. They haven't had a bye since week 5 of the NFL season. So they needed this bye to heal up, to rest, to get right before making this Super Bowl run. Danny, what say you about this Detroit Lions Minnesota Vikings game?
Something, if you watched the Packer game last week versus what Detroit did this week against the Vikings, the Lions went up the middle
Mm-hmm.
on defense and pressured
Mm-hmm.
Darnold. Darnold had opportunities now, man. They're in the red zone a lot. They just didn't execute and ended up with just 3 field goals. So they put him on tilt, which that Lions defense was all over the place, and they started to get some people back too. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
another key here where they may get a couple more bodies back by the time they play first round because of their
Mm-hmm.
bye. So that's huge. It'll give Gibbs a break. And this goes back to the Saquon Barkley conversation we were just having. Last week, the Lions could have sat everybody because that game meant nothing against the 49ers ahead of this game against the Vikings, and they went ahead and played. So it could be part of the mentality of the coach as well, and just kind of how they're following him and following his lead. They did not let the Vikings get any type of like continuity, momentum at all. So this is a different team. Lions teams in the past, Jason, you know, we've been watching sports for a long time. This is where
Mm-hmm.
they usually kind of bow out
Yep.
a game like this in the the bright lights Sunday night. But I think this goes back to the game where they beat the Packers a couple years ago, where the Packers win and they're in.
Mm-hmm.
They had nothing to play for.
Mm-hmm.
Since
Yep.
that point, that Sunday night game against Green Bay, when they knocked Aaron Rodgers and the team out, they kind of carried that forward. So testament to Dan Campbell and the front office and the team they have there. Now they're looking to try to get to the Super Bowl.
And then just as we talk about Green Bay Packers lost more than this a game yesterday. They lost to a rival, the hated Chicago Bears. Packers really didn't have a whole lot to play for other than maybe some seeding here and there. I think had they won, they probably would have played maybe the Rams instead. I want to say, but it looks like they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles in round 1 next week. But not only did they lose to the Bears, and I gotta say this too, man, to those Bears fans, okay, y'all won in Lambeau, okay, okay, but keep in mind who y'all won against. You won against really a second string team.
Mhm.
Jordan Love gets hurt. Says he can play next week. It was an elbow issue. Says he can play next week against the Eagles, but he gets out early.
Mhm.
Looking at the box scores, I mean, Josh Jacobs only had 6 carries for the game and a touchdown. I think they shut him down early too. So, do you want to see your rival win against you at home? No, not really. But we have bigger things to, be concerned with. Also in this game, we lost Christian Watson, torn ACL. He's out for the season and beyond. So really hate it for him. That's going to be, something to really look out for, in terms of the rehab and him getting back on the field. I think an MRI is still going to be needed here to see what else is going on there, but it's been confirmed that he has a torn ACL. Danny, what say you about this game?
That Christian Watson injury will be huge because he's the one that stretches the field.
Yep.
Losing him, I know they've played without him because he has the injury bug. But just to lose him at this point of the season and more or less, depending on rehab goes, you may lose him for most of the next year.
Hmm.
So that's a key injury. And then Jordan Love getting injured, how his elbow is. It's hard to say right now what the weather is looking like because there's talking about possibly snow out east when they kick off next week on Sunday. And if it's cold, how does that impact his throwing motion and all that,
Hmm.
or just him in general? I think from the Bears' perspective, I know fans. I heard some chatter as far as why are you winning? Kind of like the whole Patriots thing, and some of these other teams. Like, what are you doing? You're playing for a pick, but
Hmm.
from their perspective, it gives them some confidence,
Hmm.
especially from like a Caleb Williams perspective, and whoever the new regime is coming in, give them some momentum. Kind of like we were just talking about with Detroit. You kind of got to pick those small victories and kind of build upon that. And, you're going into the offseason with a victory, and we'll see what happens with the Bears. But yeah, like you said, the Packers didn't have too much to play for. They could have moved possibly with the Commanders. That's who they were battling with on
Hmm.
seeding.
Hmm.
So I don't know, man. I don't know if I would want Philly the first round, but that's the way it is
Yeah.
and on the road. So we'll see what they're made of.
Arrested Philly at that. And I don't the Packers don't have the luxury this season, this playoff season, to be slept on.
Hmm.
Everybody knows about the Packers now. Yes, you're the youngest team in the NFL, but that's not going to be an excuse going forward here. You're now a veteran team in the playoffs, and everybody saw what you did last year. So more to come on that. But Danny, we got to talk about your Falcons, man. What say you about your Falcons?
But Jason, for those who did not know, going into yesterday's game, we needed to win no matter what, and we needed some help from the New Orleans Saints to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And going into the fourth quarter, the New Orleans Saints were actually beating the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. It was
Hmm.
19-13. Lo and behold, we go ahead and turn Bryce Young into Mike Vick, and he has his best game of his career. He out there having a
Man.
great time. It was a wasted effort because, like we were just talking about, the Bears going into the offseason with a victory. The Falcons go in losing two games where they didn't get the ball in overtime.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And you give up 44 to the Carolina Panthers. They had nothing to play for but pride. So credit to them for coming into Atlanta and beating us down. Bijan had 180 yards or 170 yards. Drake London had 180 yards receiving. Penix threw for 312. So the offense did what they had to do, man. It was the
Hmm.
defense
Hmm.
that was horrid. So I'm looking for some changes.
Hmm.
I'm not sure, the D coordinator, Jimmy Lake, they definitely got to evaluate him. And then Raheem, I just don't know, man. 8-9 with this team, a lot of turbulence, obviously with Kirk Cousins. So he was kind of hamstrung that way because he had to play him.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of questions going into the offseason again in Atlanta. So we end up losing, and I'm just curious what they're going to do with first off Kirk Cousins, and
Hmm.
then from the regime perspective, because I look at it, man, you wasted 2 years now with Bijan.
Yes.
You wasted 2 years with Drake London. You
Hmm.
wasted 2 years with more than 2 years with Kyle Pitts, but he had the injury, and Kyle Pitts is just not the same. They didn't have Darnell Mooney yesterday, but they'll have him next year. So the offense looks in prime position. It's the defense. with Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates, another year with Grady Jarrett getting older.
Hmm. Hmm.
So on the defensive side of the ball, man, that's where this all hurts. And Tampa Bay ended up winning anyway. So all in all, it's a moot point, but you still got to win that game at home with all that on the line. So very disappointing loss yesterday, 44-38 to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball here, and like you said, I agree. Just the wasted effort here for the season. But I think you find out something about Michael Penix Jr.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have someone, a quarterback here, given time, can shine here, can make throws, can establish a rapport with the wide receiving crew and with the offensive line, etc. I think they're going to cut Kirk Cousins, man. I think they're going to try to save as much money now as possible. I think before the February deadline, March deadline,
March.
but yeah, March. If they cut them by then, they save $10 million. I think at this juncture, you got to cut them. You got to save money and just get a young backup, a quality backup, at a cheap rate. I watched that game, man. I was going back and forth, and I was like, man, Bryce Young is tearing them up. And then I was like, why are these receivers so wide open? Bryce Young throws for 3 touchdowns, runs for two, 251 yards throwing the ball, 24 yards rushing the ball. And I was just like, man, one, I'm happy to see Bryce Young do well. He had
Mm-hmm.
an up and down season. He started rough, got sad, got benched, but came back. And when he came back, man, he was a different Bryce Young. The team was different when he got rid of the coach, man. I think now you got to watch out for Carolina.
Yeah, they have Canales at the head coaching position,
Yeah.
an offensive mind, and it was a blessing in disguise for Bryce Young to get
Mm-hmm.
benched.
Mm-hmm.
He got some time to understand the offense because it was a new offense too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because Frank Wright got fired at the end of last year, and a new offense, and he looked comfortable at the end of the season when
Yeah.
he started playing again, and he got
Mm-hmm.
Thielen back. That was another big piece.
Mm-hmm.
Him, because Thielen and him, they have a good rapport. It looks good from a Carolina perspective. Their defense is a sieve,
Mm-hmm.
as it showed yesterday. So they definitely need to improve their defense, but their offense showed some signs. And like I said, Bryce Young out there having a good time in Atlanta at our expense. So tough way to end the season.
Broncos Chiefs, nobody played for the Chiefs. They sat all the starters. They have 2 weeks off, which at this point in the season, I think would be good for anybody. And then this is another game of note, milestone here of Aaron Rodgers. He throws for 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 274 yards. Very first touchdown he throws is touchdown number 500. And kudos to him. Who's to say what's going to happen for him next season? Whether he's going to play in the NFL anymore, whether he's going to play for the Jets, or if he goes on, to another organization. We'll see. Obviously, there's controversy swirling Aaron Rodgers. I will say he did get Green Bay a championship ring, which I do appreciate. I think he could still play. I think it would have to be with a team that has a great offensive line.
Hmm.
That has to be paramount. And I don't think he needs to be calling the shots. He doesn't need to say, I want to bring this guy, that guy. No, you're the quarterback.
Yep.
You do what we say. Those days are over. I think, yeah, you're an all-time great first round, or first time ballot Hall of Famer, but mm-mm, those days are over. So we'll see what happens in his future. What say you, Danny, about the rest of the NFL weekend?
Uh, to that point, Jason, with Aaron Rodgers, I think coming off an Achilles at his age, I think these last couple weeks, I know the week last week they got destroyed by Buffalo, but he actually looked like he has some mobility. I know he's not moving like he used to, obviously, after coming off an injury like that, but he actually looked like more himself these last
Hmm.
couple weeks too. So that's something else to factor in where he probably is just getting healthy
Hmm.
because he struggled mightily during the season. And then as far as other games were concerned, yeah, like you said, Broncos took care of business. They're headed to Buffalo next week, so that'll be a good test for them because I think Buffalo's going to come in just trying to take care of some business. And then too, uh, we've had some firings from the head coaching positions. Gerard Mayo from New England,
Hmm. Hmm.
Doug Peterson from Jacksonville, a couple coordinators, one from Cincinnati, the defensive coordinator. One other note, Jay, the Tennessee Titans end up with the number one pick. So I think I think part of that factored into Gerard Mayo's firing because the Patriots were slotted to get the number one pick, and they actually benched Drake May. But
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
all that being said, Tennessee gets the number one pick, so they're on the clock, and we'll see once they go to Lambeau who they pick.
One of the rumors is possibly Mike McCarthy looking into the Chicago Bears head coaching position. If that's the case, come on to the NFC North. You would get rolled on.
Yep.
And so with that, the playoff bracket has been completed. In the AFC conference, you have the Texans facing off against the Chargers, Ravens against the Steelers, Bills against the Broncos, Chiefs obviously with the bye. That Texans Chargers game is going to be really good.
Hmm.
Uh, I think the Ravens are going to win. That Bills Broncos, I'm up in the air on. I'm leaning towards the Bills, but watch out for the Broncos there. And Texans Chargers, I'm leaning towards the Chargers. In the NFC, you have, well, we'll probably go to the NFC, Danny. What you think about the AFC?
Jason, I agree. I think the Chargers can pull the upset in Houston. The way Justin Herbert and team are playing, the
Hmm.
Ravens. They have all the momentum right now. So it'll take a miracle from Pittsburgh to win that game just because Pittsburgh's actually on the downward trajectory, losing four in a row, limping into the playoffs. And then Buffalo, I think they'll handle business against the Broncos at home.
Now, conference I'm a little bit more used to here, the NFC conference. You have Rams against the Vikings, Buccaneers, Commanders, and Eagles, Packers. First to start off, the Rams and Vikings. That's gonna be a good one, actually, man. That's gonna be that's a tough one. I'm leaning a little bit towards the Vikings. I think the Vikings have to travel to the Rams for
Mm-hmm.
that one. That's a tough one. Buccaneers against the Commanders. This is also a tough one for me, man. I think I will lean towards the Commanders. I think that might be an upset. Eagles and Packers. My homer bias says Packers, but the Eagles rested everybody. So I think I'll lean a little bit towards the Eagles. That rushing defense is going to be, or excuse me, rushing offense by the Eagles is going to be something else. This is going to be a close game. I think people are thinking this is going to be a blowout. I think this might be a close game. The injury to Christian Watson is huge. And with that, for them to stretch the field and everything, I think that's where the issue will be. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that the O line protects Jordan Love, but we'll see, man. I'm leaning a little bit towards the Eagles on this one. I hate to say it, but I have to. What say you, Danny, about the NFC?
With the Eagles Packers game, Jason, still waiting on Jalen Hurts. They haven't
Mm-hmm.
said yet if he's cleared concussion protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's that's a big piece to this game, and he hasn't played in a couple weeks. So if there's a game, if there's a time for somebody to beat the Eagles, it's this weekend just because of the continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Eagles, like you said, sat everybody yesterday. Jalen Hurts has been hurt, uh, but they can lean on Saquon to get him through the initial, you know, quarter or two until Jalen Hurts gets his feet under him. But waiting to see on that one. I'm going Eagles, but there's a game. They could be primed for an upset.
A little rust can be could have been formed there. So yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But their defense is playing well. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one other thing that can help them through this. Commanders, Buccaneers. Commanders can beat them. I'm not even gonna front. They can beat the Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
The Buccaneers are on. They're just playing at a different level right now. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans got his. He got his $3 million yesterday. So they're on a high right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Commanders won. Don't get me wrong, because Jaden Daniels, we've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm leaning slightly towards Tampa Bay, but that's a tough one. And then that Vikings-Rams game, the Vikings can be thrown on. And what's the strength of the Rams offense? Passing. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. Well, Cooper Kupp he hasn't done much lately. But that being said, I'm not sure if the Vikings are going to have a hangover or not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. The NFC is tough, man.
NFC is tougher.
You are not lying when you.
The NFC is tougher, man.
I'm gonna go with the Rams. I think it's an upset, even though the Rams are at home. It's an upset to beat the Vikings. Yeah. Either way, I'm looking forward to these games because they should be really good.
And Danny, just a real quick note about college football. We have the Final Four, and where now it's Texas against Ohio State, the 5 against the 8 seed, and then Penn State against Notre Dame, 6 versus the 7 seed. I did not expect Notre Dame to get this far, quite frankly. For me, this Texas-Ohio State game is the game to determine who's the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Penn State or Notre Dame has enough juice to get over the hump here. That Penn State Notre Dame is the loser bracket. That's just my opinion. What say you, Danny, about this college football playoff bracket?
Ohio State's rolling, man, after what they did to Oregon.
Yep.
But Texas is not an easy game.
Mm-hmm.
It's contrasting styles in a way. So curious how this goes with Ewers and how he plays, from the quarterback from Texas. I think Penn State Notre Dame should be a tight game. I think Notre Dame pulls the upset there since they are the lower seed, but I think they're actually a better team than Penn State. So I think they pull the upset, and I think they meet Ohio State in the championship. And I think Ohio State, if they beat Texas, they'll get the national championship. But it's not going to be – I think I have a different opinion. I think it'll be closer than what you think, but I think Ohio State will still win.
Man, I have no confidence in Notre Dame. Every time they get to this stage, man, they always get mollywopped, man. So I can see that happening again. Well, I mean, what do you think about this college playoff? They
need to make some changes as far as the seeding is concerned.
Yeah, agreed.
As we saw in the second round with some of the upsets. So that I think that's definitely a change. And I just didn't see that Ohio State-Oregon game going the way it did.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be closer to that. So Ohio State is like a different team.
And Danny, with that, you have the last word.
So Jason, this show is dedicated to a special person I lost this past week. My grandma. She had a profound impact on me, our family, and she'll be dearly missed. I love you, Grandma, and this show is dedicated to you.
Thank you for joining us at Back Porch Talk Podcast. You can also join us on Twitter by tweeting us at @back_podcast. For more information, you can go to our website, which is backporchtalkpodcast.com. You can also email us at backporchtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember that there's enough hate in the world, so go ahead and spread a little love.